John Steenhuisen of the DA, thanks for chatting to us today. The DA entering into government from an international perspective. What does that mean for South Africa and for the rest of the world, I suppose?
Well, I think that it's got to be seen in the context of the political environment that's emerged post the 2024 election, where no one party's got a majority. The voters have dealt that hand. We've seen a rise of the anti-constitutionalists, and a government has to be formed. And so, as the second largest party in the country, we believe that we have a duty to try and form some form of arrangement that focuses on stability, constitutionalism, and growth. And we would want to seek to achieve those three things and to prevent the radical policies of the anti-constitutionalists from getting into government and doing what those policies did in Zimbabwe, in Venezuela, and wherever else they've been tried in the world.
Yeah. Talking about that and the other opposition parties, the Economic Freedom Fighters, the MK Party, if they did have to enter into government, what are we looking at?
Well, if one looks at their policy suite and as well as their manifesto promises, these all focused on very radical Chavez-style politics, expropriation of land without compensation, abolition of private property ownership, nationalization of the Reserve Bank, MK talking about doing away with the judiciary and returning to a sovereign parliament, which is what we had in the system of apartheid. So you'll abolish the rule of law and replace it with the rule of parliament. Sending pregnant teenage women to Robben Island. These are the sort of radical policies. And I think that overnight, if those get into government, you will see disinvestment, you will see capital flight, and many, many more South Africans lining up in an unemployment queue, much more hunger and poverty, and an economy that is going to then stagnate and decline to the point where it will not be able to provide for what is required.
Yeah. The DA entering into government, that would be with the ANC. What do you expect to see? We had years of state capture. We've had corruption. Do they want you there?
Well, I don't know if they want us there, and that's what this week is all about. It's about the parties reaching out to find each other and see what the options are. We've tasked our negotiating team to go out and engage with these other parties and to bring back what they've put on the table to our federal executive and allow us to look at those options and see which is the least worst out of all of them, because there are no good options. And to try and find out which one will work best for South Africa, focusing on growth, stability, and protecting the Constitution and our democracy, but also good for the DA going forward. And those 3.5 million people who placed their trust in our party to rescue South Africa.
Looking at, though, things like national health insurance, these are things that the DA have said, hold on a second, they're red flags here. What does that mean for a coalition with the ANC? Because that's their baby.
Well, we would obviously, if we get into formal negotiations, we'll obviously put on the table things like the NHI. But the thing is, I don't think there's a difference in the approach to what we want to do. Both the DA and the ANC, and I would venture most other parties, want to see universal access to basic health care. We believe you can do it in South Africa. It just is not the NHI. And so either through amendment bills or through a repealing and replacing, you would be able to, I believe, move towards universal access to basic health care. We've done it in the Western Cape. Taxpayer-funded public hospitals that are clean, that work, that heal the sick and are able to function properly. There's no reason we couldn't carry that experience into national government to see how it could be done at a national level. Empowerment policies as well. We all want to see people who have been previously disadvantaged from being given an opportunity to improve their lives. It's not sustainable in a country to have 30 million people that live below the poverty line, and it's not sustainable when 99.97% of them are black. But if we look at some of the empowerment policies of this government and look at what their effect has been, they've widened inequality, not narrowed it. They've expanded black unemployment, not narrowed it. And they have led to a situation where black South African households now are 10 to 12% poorer than they were 10 to 15 years ago. So I think it is time to relook at these policies, and we would certainly be wanting to be part of a review of these things and to look at how we could make it better. But I don't think that there's a difference in what we want to achieve at the end of the day. I think there's a difference on the vehicle to do it, and I think that's where the elements of negotiation would start to come into play.
But will there not be a situation where you have some members of the ANC who don't want the DA to take a look at the books because the books don't look so good?
Well, that's for the ANC to decide. I have no control over what happens in the ANC. I've only got control of what my party and our negotiating team would be looking at. But certainly, I think that it would give international markets confidence that a party that has delivered clean, accountable, corruption-free government in the Western Cape, all government departments with a clean audit, Auditor General, top municipalities, all in the DA-run Western Cape. And I think taking that track record into government would certainly give markets and voters some satisfaction that now there are clean, accountable people in an arrangement that is looking at how we can best save the country, rescue South Africa, and focus on the stability and growth agenda in the country.
The DA's campaign has been that, rescue South Africa. How do you turn it around in a country where it's so unequal?
Yeah, but you've got to deal with that inequality. And the reality is that over the last 30 years, government programs and policies have focused on trying to create an equality of outcome. What we should be doing is focusing on how you create an equality of opportunity. And that is why, where we govern in the Western Cape, we put such focus on things like quality education, quality healthcare, quality public services, quality public transport systems. Because if you give people access to an equality of opportunity, you have less to manage in trying to create an equality of outcome. And I think that we're not going to deal with inequality until we grow the economy. The best antidote against inequality is jobs. If you've got a job in your house, if you've got a father or mother with a job, it is going to lead to a narrowing of the inequality gap in South Africa. The biggest gap in South Africa, the biggest inequality gap in South Africa is the difference between people who have a job and those who don't. So focusing on, like a laser beam, on getting the things required to create growth and create jobs is going to be the best antidote to the inequality crisis in the country.
President Cyril Ramaphosa had his own initiative to get investment into this country. He wanted to have billions enter into South Africa. Where did he not get it right? Because we're not seeing the unemployment rate go down.
Well, I think where he got it wrong was that many of the announcements that he made in terms of the New Dawn, many of which we agreed with, were never translated into legislation. So they remain dreams on a piece of paper, but were never enacted into legislation. So if we really want to get investment into South Africa, we've got to focus on creating the environment for investment to flourish. Uncertainty about expropriation does not do that. Collapsing infrastructure, where our roads, our ports and harbours, our railway service are dysfunctional, does not augur well for attracting international investment. The energy crisis. Who on earth is going to bring a factory to South Africa or some manufacturing process where we have a shortage of electricity and blackouts in the country? Water shedding the same. So we've got to focus on getting those basic things right. And that's what the DA's manifesto for rescuing South Africa did. It took 7 key areas and said, these are the things we've got to focus on getting right over the next 5 years if we want to realize any of the further ambitions that we have going forward. And they were focused on the simple things, water and electricity, basic education for children, focused on crime and criminality and how you could fight crime. It focused on being able to build proper public services and a capable state free of cadre deployment. It focused on being able to lift 2 million people into work, and it focused on combating poverty with some measures to do so. And I still believe that is the path. And obviously in any coalition negotiation, if you get to that stage, you would want to negotiate as many planks from your manifesto into a potential new government program of action. And that's certainly what we would seek to do. It's what I've said already that we will carry those 7 key priority areas into any negotiations, because I still believe that those are the key areas that require our attention over the next 5 years if we're going to create jobs, create growth, if we're going to end poverty, and if we're going to build an opportunity society for more South Africans.
Yeah. Your critics say that the DA is too white. It's a white party.
Well, I would encourage them to have a look very carefully at the statistics. If the DA was a white party, we'd be sitting at roughly 2% of the vote. We're now sitting at 22% of the vote. We are drawing support from all South Africans. We are the most diverse political party. Our top 6 is the most diverse of any top 6 in the country. The ANC's top 6 is all black. The EFF's top 6 is all white. Freedom Front's top 6 is all white. The DA's is there. It is black, white, Indian, and coloured, all sitting together around the same table, around common values and principles, driving change. If you also look at the Social Research Foundation's study that they did last year into political party support, the DA's support roughly comes in thirds: a third black, a third white, and a third coloured and Indian. On top of that, we're now the largest party in urban South Africa, which shows we are drawing support across all racial profiles in the country and racial demographics. And I'm very comfortable that we've grown nicely the selection amongst black South African voters. I look at places like Chesterville, look at places like Khayelitsha, look at places like Soweto, where the DA grew its vote from 2019. And that shows that we're on the right path.
Yeah. The multi-party charter was a great idea. Is it now dead in the water?
Well, it was set up for a purpose, and that was to bring the ANC below 50% and then to be able to form a new majority that would be able to bring a new government into place. I think it was the right idea. I maintain that the best outcome for South Africa would have been if the multi-party charter had gone over the line. While the DA grew in this election, some of the other parties to the charter did not live up to the expectations that we had of them and they had of themselves. And as a result, at the end of the day, when we looked at the election results, the multi-party charter had collectively around 29% of the vote. That's not enough to form a majority. Now, I'm committed to working with the parties in the charter who want to do what's good for South Africa now and who want to help us defend the Constitution, stand up for the rule of law, build a social market economy where there's a partnership with the private sector and the growth and jobs agenda, to work together to be part of that. And so I'm hoping that as many of the MPC parties as possible will join us in this effort to form a bulwark against the march of the anti-constitutionalists and also to be part of finding a solution. The reality is the voters have dealt the cards the way they have, and in 2 weeks' time we will have to form a government, one way or the other.
The MK party, an absolute surprise. Were you surprised or did you see this coming?
No, we saw it coming. We picked it up in our polling, which was why I was able to share with various news houses that the real battle in this election was for the third place between the EFF and MK. And we've seen MK have pushed the EFF down to fourth place into Parliament. And of course, the EFF also lost seats in this election and have gone backwards. But I saw it coming. Let me tell you why. Jacob Zuma is a master politician. Now, you may not like him, but his favorability rate, his name recognition in South Africa is unparalleled. He's by far the most well-known politician in the country. And you marry that with a wholesale takeover of ANC structures in a place like KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, and Mpumalanga, and you've got a formidable combination there. Ally that with a bit of money coming in from Moscow and a few other places around the world, and you've got a campaign there. I saw during the registration weekend that we weren't dealing with some startup party. They had gazebos, T-shirts, branded vehicles, organisation. This was a party that's been up and running for a while, and they were determined to do what they did. And I think the result in KZN, as terrifying as it is for freedom-loving Democrats, is remarkable.
What are you expecting from Jacob Zuma?
I'm expecting more of the same of his behaviour over the last 20 years. And this is where I think the ANC assisted his campaign by portraying him as the victim. Jacob Zuma is at his most dangerous when he is able to play the victim. Like they want to get to you, but I'm standing in their way, much like another politician across the ocean. They want to be. He wants to be able to be seen as the victim. I was marginalised by the ANC. They try to keep me out. I'm standing up for you. And I think if we see some of the threats, very naked threats of violence, and if the IEC made the announcements, I think is very chilling, because we saw only too well in KwaZulu-Natal just over 2 years ago what happens when those political sparks find fertile tinder in the anger, the hunger, and the unemployment in a place like KwaZulu-Natal. And I really hope that we're going to see more responsible statements from him going forward. But I think as the stakes get higher now, as we start to negotiate coalitions, I think in order to mobilize his base, unfortunately, I think we're going to see a lot more of this war talk and rhetoric.
But here is somebody at the center of state capture, it's Jacob Zuma. So Jacob Zuma at the center of state capture, number one. Number two, there was a looting in KwaZulu-Natal in 2021. At some point, somebody's got to be called to order for this.
Well, he's been an absolute master at avoiding being called to order. I mean, we've had a 15-year battle now to make sure he faces the 790 charges of fraud, corruption and racketeering, for which he's still to have his day in court, but has managed to avoid for the last 15 years. We saw what happened when he was incarcerated. Who helped him out of jail? Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC. And it's ironic now that he's come out to sort of be the person who's worked hard to put them in a difficult position. But I mean, he will eventually face his day in court. And who knows, maybe things will move a bit quicker now that he is an electoral threat rather than just an internal one.
Yeah. Entering into government, what are the 5 things you'd need to do first?
First, we've got to end load shedding in the country. You cannot grow an economy without electricity. I think you'd have to look at expanding the work that's already been done and bringing the private sector on board. I think we can move a lot faster there. Secondly, you have to make sure that you deal with the infrastructure crisis in the country. And again, this is something that could quite easily be done through a public-private partnership model, particularly on rail and the ports and harbours. It's international best practice. Thirdly, you've got to focus absolutely on being able to fix the education system in the country through an overhaul of the curriculum and a focus on teacher quality. We've got a plan that would triple the number of grade 4 learners who can read for meaning. Currently, 82% of grade 4 learners cannot read for meaning. And then focusing as well on policing. It is unacceptable that 84 South Africans are killed every day. We have a plan that would involve devolution of policing to local level to be able to have much better results. And it works. And the Law Enforcement Advancement Program in the Western Cape has been able to reduce crime, has been able to ensure that you have better results. Those are the key things that you'd be required to do. And finally, build up independent, professional public service. Because you can have the best policies and plans, if you don't have an implementing ability through a public service that's appointed on merit, not on party affiliation, you're going to have a very, very difficult time getting anything done.
And jobs, jobs and jobs.
Well, all of those things speak into the jobs agenda. You're not going to grow jobs without infrastructure. You're not going to create jobs if you don't have a skilled population that are able to go out and be entrepreneurs and carry that experience. You're not going to create jobs in an environment where crime is running rampant and deterring foreign investment. So all of these things are designed to ensure that South Africa becomes an engine room of jobs and job production in South Africa, so that we can start to reverse the inequality, reverse the huge unemployment rate, particularly amongst younger people, and start to build a better future for the country.
John Steenhuisen, leader of the DA, thank you so much for taking the time today to chat to us, and well done on your election result.
Thank you very much. It's always great to be with you, and it's going to be an exciting few weeks for South Africa.